Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as I record this episode, I've been reading this morning that it's been the end of an era for BlackBerry as the company pulled the plug on support of its classic smartphones 22 years after those devices first hit the market. But what those headlines didn't tell you is that over 195 million cars all over the world actually contain BlackBerry software. And in fact, they're currently at CES in Vegas, showcasing smart car innovations. And BlackBerry IVY, developed in partnership with AWS, is the company's cloud-connected software ecosystem that equips OEMs with the ability to analyse things like vehicle sensor data and derive actionable insights as a result. So I want to bust a few myths and perceptions today and learn more about what BlackBerry are doing in this world. So buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to CES 2022, where Peter Virk, Vice President of IVY Product and Ecosystem at BlackBerry, is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So Peter Virk, so I'm the VP at BlackBerry for IVY, for Product and Ecosystem. What is IVY? It's our intelligent vehicle data platform for the automotive industry going forwards. What does that mean? Let's put it in simple terms. It's about unlocking the true value of the signals, the sensors inside of a vehicle. The industry is talking about the new software-defined car, and IVY helps unlock that data, normalize it, make sure it's safe and secure, and provide these insights from the vehicle to OEMs so they can create applications, but also to ecosystem members from established companies and partners, but also startups. So it's really trying to drive this safe and secure standard approach of getting access to data off the vehicle and add applications and services and spark off innovation.
There's so much we've got to talk about today, but before we do and look into the future, what's coming, I always like to ask my guests about their origin story, how they got where they are today, what lit that passion for technology within them, and how that world collided for yourself with tech and vehicles, etc., and the path that led you to CES 2022. I feel there's got to be a story there.
You're right, there is one. I've got a long career in automotive. I knew when I was probably about 10, 12 years old, cars were it for me, and being linked to cars and technology. And from a young age, I always started, in fact, most of the gifts my parents got me, the first thing I would do is take them apart because I wanted to know how they worked, which baffled them for a while, but that drove my route towards engineering, which then paved the way towards starting my career at Rover Group. And it was great. I did some education, on-site training, as well as working with obviously the products. And then as my career progressed, it was always around the technology in the infotainment space. So working with phone integration, even before Bluetooth existed, believe it or not, there's curly corded handsets that you plug in, right through to satellite navigation systems, even off-roading navigation, and then smartphone integration. And it moved towards cloud integration using HTML5 code, as well as launching and generating the connected car experiences where you can start to control your car from your mobile phone. I've been fortunate. My career to date has been a bit of a hobby. So I've been managed to apply the both together. And with my role now at BlackBerry, truly been given the ability to go on this next transition for the next decade, where the software-defined car and the whole electrification journey is making things more software-centric. And I've got a lead role in playing a part in that. Yeah, that's what gets me out of bed every morning.
Wow, what an amazing story as well. And on this podcast, one of the things I always try and do is bust a few myths and misconceptions. And if I was to say, what does BlackBerry mean to you, to everybody listening all over the world, I think we both know what they will say. So can you tell the listeners a little bit more about BlackBerry's road to CES and the journey you guys have been on?
So firstly, what I'd say is BlackBerry today is very much focused on a couple of key aspects. Firstly, automotive. It's the role I play. For many years, actually, BlackBerry has been in many cars. In fact, it's in over 195 million vehicles as its operating system, QNX. So many may or may not be aware of, but it's the operating system that runs infotainment systems, the digital clusters, and obviously autonomous systems as we go forward. So there's a huge role that actually BlackBerry already plays within cars today. The other aspect is that we bring in is making sure it's safe, secure with our cyber DNA and internet connectivity and aspects. The two are key, right? So ensuring you get a good operating system. Now cars are connected, making sure that the data is safely and securely managed. That's the key focus. And then what we're doing now and what we're showcasing at CES is a continuation on the QNX, operating system in terms of the abilities and how it's meeting the needs of our customers and OEMs, from cockpit controllers that power the whole digital experience inside the vehicle through autonomous systems. And then the new additional piece we've added, which is IVY, our vehicle intelligent platform, where we're actually taking a lot of the information or that data that is buzzing around the networks around the vehicle and making that available for OEMs to provide applications and services on top, but also bring in ecosystem partners. And that's the core path forwards we're driving, is using our heritage, but also applying our experience and innovation to help the automotive industry as we move forwards.
And I'm glad you mentioned BlackBerry IVY there, because it is developed in partnership with AWS, and it's your company's cloud-connected software ecosystem that, as you said, equips OEMs with the ability to analyze vehicle sensor data and also derive actionable insights. But can you just introduce the listeners to a little bit more about that latest platform's capabilities and also the kind of problems that you're solving for your customers with it?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned before, you've always got to look at heritage, where you're coming from and where you're going towards. And that's one of the reasons why we have this partnership with Amazon AWS. We're really strong in the vehicle, they're strong in the cloud. Put the two together, you get this third dimension and this next generation of innovation. And what is it? We all know that many cars have got software in them, we've got semiconductors in them. There's a huge amount of data within that vehicle that needs to be utilized or harnessed in a safe way to unlock new innovations. Now, historically, that's been done in the traditional way by each auto OEM or through their partners and the tier ones. But as the automotive industry is moving forwards, people want to use software to define that new experience. And that experience is for the OEMs to create themselves. So they want to take ownership of the software and the applications that they develop, but also bring in new partners, industry partners or startups, to actually use some of that information on the car to create an application or a service. What does that look like? Well, if you look at the car industry now and for the next 10 years, there's a lot of consolidation firstly happening. And that consolidation is consolidating a number of ECUs into these domain controllers. And these domain controllers are bringing in a whole host of information from cameras, occupant sensors, sensing information around the chassis systems, how the vehicle's performing, and the batteries, right? As we've got this huge electrification piece. That's one aspect. And then you've got the other aspect around the cloud side, where people want cars to be connected. And we've seen over the last years, the industry has been, the connected car has been the key thing. But now it's about, what do you do with that information and data, add value, add innovation on top? And that's what we've done with IVY. So the first thing, and one of the key USPs about IVY is actually using the edge processing capability and the capabilities of the car to process some of that information. Well, you've got information running around the vehicle and you've got processing power. So if we want to recognize who the driver is, if we want to recognize a particular action, you may not want to send that data all from the car to the cloud and back, because you need to reduce latency. You need to make decisions in milliseconds or microseconds. So you do that on the vehicle. On top of that, you don't have to send all your data to the cloud, because you can actually process some of that information on the car and make decisions. And over time, use machine learning to understand behaviors. So that's one aspect. Okay. Yeah. Then there is another aspect where you do need that cloud connectivity to bring in additional partners. So to do cloud-to-cloud integration for a new service. What does that really mean in normal speak? So let's talk about one application that we're showcasing at CES on our IVY demo as we're bringing it to life and showing it running on actual real hardware. We're showing Ivy working with a number of partners. One of those partners is Electra, and they've got a technology called AI technology, AI, which basically takes information from the car and actually gives you two aspects. Number one, it gives the OEM deeper insights around how's the battery being used? How's it being charged? What's its performance going to be like? What's its prediction going to be like in a year, 2 years, 5 years, and so forth, which is really important for the OEM to understand their warranty, to understand the servicing needs, and so forth around electric vehicles, because electric vehicles are a big driver going forwards, but also for them to make improvements based on usage of the vehicle, getting to know your customer better. Then on the other side, you can create a series of applications. Both the OEMs can do themselves or with partners to say, now I know this information about the battery. How does the OEM add additional applications for an end consumer to make it better? Knowing when do I need to charge? How often do I need to charge for? Let's imagine that you're going on a journey and you may have a sporty driver and you may have an economical driver. You need to know your range and you need to make sure you're not going to have that range anxiety issue. Well, rather than the human having to compute all of that themselves, why doesn't the car do it for you? Because that data is available and those decisions can be made. So let's just say you're driving to a long road trip. You've got to go there. You've got to come back. But if on your return journey, your battery charging is getting quite close to getting towards the zero factor, the car can start to make recommendations to say, I know you've got to get home by this time. Therefore, you could either stop and charge, or if we reduce some of the loads off the vehicle, like some of the USB loads or some of the entertainment loads or the air conditioning, you might be able to get home without stopping for a charge. And the car can then make those decisions for you because it's got access to that data. That's one element. And it can also tell you that you may want to drive slightly slower on a highway by a few miles an hour because that will make you, get home without having to stop for a charge. Then there's other insights where the car knows its location, it knows where it's going, and it knows how many occupants. So if you're going, let's just say in North America, there's a number of HOV lanes where there's more than 2 occupants in the car, Ivy can safely, securely say, hey, you can go in this lane and I can navigate you into this lane. You can get there quicker without less traffic. But also, if there's any payments that need to be made through toll booths or charging roads, with the Car IQ integration, we can also safely, securely provide that because we know how many occupants were in the car. We know the car was at that location. And if you did stop for a charging point, it can also link the two together because it's using the data on the car with the data in the cloud, bringing the two together to make a lot of those decisions for you. And then when you provide all these interfaces up, that's when the power of Ivy really gets understood, is because more partners can add on more. We're only showing a small sample of some of the experiences, but as you can imagine, if you and I started to spar on this call, we could come up with 100 or so ideas of what to do with that vehicle data.
And there was a quote from about 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was somebody from IBM, and they said that the last great experience you had anywhere becomes the next expectation for what you want everywhere. And we've seen it happen in the past with everything from Uber, Amazon, and one-click checkouts, and Spotify, Netflix, etc. But I'm curious, do you think these real-time AI decisions being made by the Ivy platform that are almost reshaping and setting a new standard for in-car experiences, do you think that is going to become a new expectation?
I think so. And many of us who drive today think about when you used to drive maybe 10 years ago, the things that we would need to do. Well, let's go even before that. Your navigation, you need to know where you've got to go. You needed an A to Z. Who knows my children don't even know what an A to Z is nowadays, right? And you would have to plan your trip. Where now, literally, you can just jump in a vehicle and go because information is available. And it is that point about reducing the friction. Give me time back. Give me the ability to enjoy my drive and actually allow the computing power in the car to make decisions that I would normally have to do. And that ranges from number of services in the vehicle, from if I was to bring in a music player application like Amazon Prime Music or Spotify, it knows my habits. As long as the car recognizes me, it can play me the music I want. I now don't have to shuffle through CDs and make that decision. If I need to find a charging space or a fueling place, the car can also say, oh, you're going along this route, and these are the sensible places to stop. Oh, and by the way, because they're connected, I can tell you if they're busy or if they're free. Again, taking that cognitive load off me of the driver and using the technology to make that choice. Every driver and every occupant are going to be different. Some people will embrace technology quicker. Some people would like the control themselves, which is what we're seeing with autonomous vehicles. And there's different categories. It's our role to provide that safely and securely. It's then the ecosystem and the OEMs to provide the applications that they want to do add in on the top, and for us to mature that over time. So it's definitely the way the world's going. It's already happened. Look at mobile. Look at the things that we do on our phones, even our smart homes now. I don't even walk into the house and put the lights on anymore. Yeah. The house knows it's dark. It knows I've entered the room and it puts the light on. And the same's been happening with the car. Auto wipers, headlights. We just need to push the boundary a lot further now with what can be done.
And before you came on the podcast today, I've been doing a little bit of research on you guys and following what you're doing at CES. And another thing that stood out was IVY Book, which is BlackBerry's physical car dashboard. So can you expand on that and how that can be used on a trip?
Yeah, this has been hugely exciting, where at CES, we are bringing IVY and we're showcasing it to the world because it's been developed and made available on automotive grade hardware and software with IVY running on it. And what we've done is we're showcasing that on some of those experiences that I mentioned earlier that can be showcased. So firstly, the book demonstrates a number of day-in-the-life scenarios of a family trip, people driving, going to a grocery store or having a day trip out. And then it's been integrated that the IVY platform has been surfacing up a lot of this vehicle information. So we've taken recordings from real vehicle road trips and we've put that into the IVY book because obviously on the CES show stand, we can't drive around. So we're simulating that. So we're replaying those vehicle network signals onto the book and we're showcasing firstly the code. So what code IVY makes available. So these are the insights and the machine learning models. So we can do the driver recognition. So we know if it's driver A or driver B, are they a sporty driver? Are they an economical driver? We know the charge state of the vehicle. We know how many occupants are in the car. We know you're going to go somewhere and if you're going to park using the location-based services we've here. So again, we're actually showcasing a lot of that day-in-the-life experience on the book with the displays that we've got available. We've been working the last 12 months busy developing the software. It's now time to showcase it to the world and show it running on automotive grade hardware.
And you guys are doing a great job of showcasing it over there at CES. But if we were to get everything that we've talked about today, put it into context and bring that everything to life to help people listening audibly, and could you possibly offer maybe a use case of how connected cars can be driven by data and how it will work in the real world? And just to have that almost compare contrast with where we were 5 years ago from where we're heading to.
Yeah, sure. So let's think of a payment solution, right? Because when you pay for things, you want to make sure things are done safely and securely. Let's just say I've got an EV vehicle and maybe I may even have a fueled vehicle. And what IVY can do is it can provide the information from the vehicle to the back-end cloud infrastructure to authenticate. What does that mean? So I today drive in my vehicle and on my non-connected car, I need fuel. So I pull up at the garage, I stop, I get out of the vehicle, I start filling up. And then once I filled up, I have to go in and I'll make that payment either cash or through a credit card. And the only way I know how much fuel I've put in because that's what the fuel pump has told me. So what can IVY do? How can it make it safe, secure, and frictionless? Firstly, it's not just fuel. It can do this for any service. But let's just use the fuel one as an example. Imagine I owned a fleet. And I could have a fleet of vehicles where literally as I drive up, I can firstly navigate to that fueling station or charging station. It will know it's available and free because the charging station or fueling station will know in real time the availability because it's connected and it's connected to the car. So you can do booking and you can see availability. But when I pull up, the car knows its exact location and it knows the charging station or fueling point. So it can authenticate it to say, yes, it's Neil here. So I can authenticate Neil. What it also then does, it allows the dispensing of the fuel or charging. But because the cars also communicate, if you was to dispense 50 liters or take in, 10 kilowatts of power, the car authenticates it's received 50 liters or 10 kilowatts of power on the back end. So it says, you've distributed that much from the pump or the charging station. You've received it on the vehicle. I can confirm the two, make that safe, secure payment, get back in the vehicle and drive off. Frictionless experience. Yeah. But it's also secure because it's authenticated the two ends. Where normally when you go into the garage today, you would say, yes, I did put in 50 liters and it did cost this much. You nod and provide your credit card. Where now it's doing that in an automated, safe way with all that software experiences that we're bringing together. That's just one example. You could do the same for parking. You could do the same for tolls. And then there's a whole host of other location-based services that could be unlocked. But it all comes back down to how IVY makes it happen. It's recognized the driver. It's recognized the data set from the vehicle. So how much charge or how much fuel you have, how much you've received. Make that all available so you can start to join these dots together through the connectivity platform.
Wow, incredibly cool. And of course, this week there are so many big tech news stories going out, and it can be hard to get your voice heard at the event due to the size of it. But I'm curious, how has it been received at CES 2022? What kind of feedback have you been getting?
Absolutely fantastic. I think, as I mentioned before, we've been talking about IVY and people have read up. We've been having many, in the world that we live in, virtual meetings to describe it. But now we wanted to bring something physical and real. And I think it's like you said, seeing it and watching it in action, seeing the code. We've got one screen that actually shows the code running. We have another screen that actually shows the dashboard, so that day in the life experience. And showing all of that running in real time, that's the value. It's real, it's there. And I think that's when it clicks. I get it. I see what it can do. And it's interesting because even through the traditional companies and the startups, because we talk about what IVY makes available, they start thinking about ideas and innovations. And could this application run? And we've got an idea and we could do diagnostics. We could actually work out the vehicle's behavior and the durability of X, Y, Z. And we said, yeah, we just make that data available to you safely and securely. And so it's about unlocking that ecosystem side of things, which has really created a huge buzz on the show and on the floor.
And I know you're incredibly busy working on all this at the moment. And for everybody else, our news feeds are being continuously bombarded with so many cool tech headlines, so many videos and keynotes, and so much going on. So I'm curious, is there anything that has caught your eye at CES 2022? Anything that has captured your attention, imagination, or anything in between?
It's early days yet, but I think from what we've seen so far, automotive is definitely having a continuous drive at CES. It has been in the last few years. What we're seeing more so is more on the software-centric side of it. And I think that's the interesting piece where people are actually joining the dots together. It used to be there was an auto section, there was an IoT section, there was another cloud technology section. Actually, it's all becoming blended together through these pieces together. I think that's the interesting thing. I think more announcements will come in the next coming days. But what I'm seeing is the commitment to seeing the things coming together and more product launches. That's the thing. It's not just technology. You're seeing things being launched and announced in products. So I think the next few days are going to be definitely a space to watch that.
Awesome. And for anyone listening that would like to dive in a little bit deeper, find out any more information about anything we talked about today and everything that's going off at CES for you guys, what's the best way of finding that?
So we obviously got our BlackBerry website where we've got IVY on there, and then we've got a showcase there, so you can reach out to that. There's obviously some press material that we will make available on our site too. So that's probably the first place. If you're at CES, please come by and stop at our booth, BlackBerry, and the team will definitely give you a hands-on demo and showcase IVY in its reality, as well as one of the vehicles that we've got on the stage, which actually we've got an augmented reality app, which actually starts to talk about and demonstrate the power of IVY and how it works with vehicles. So make sure you stop by.
Oh, man, I'm quite jealous now. I'm not going to be able to stop by. But thank you so much for coming on today, for talking about connected cars that are going to be driven by data and how BlackBerry are driving the future of the car, but also wash down with your personal story and your personal origin story too. So thank you for taking the time to share that with me today.
Thank you for hosting us.
I cannot thank Peter enough for coming on here today and educating me, and hopefully you all too, about how vehicle data can be turned into actionable insights, as well as how BlackBerry QNX technology is integrated across vehicles, and how BlackBerry IVY is bringing together signals from a variety of sensors across the vehicle, and how configuration is then controlled via this cloud-based IVY console. And as a result, they're building adaptive and intelligent features that are delivering new experiences for drivers and passengers. And as I said in the interview there, that is only going to create a new expectations, and nobody's going to want to go back to the old way of driving and putting out those A to Z maps. So I'd love to know more about what you thought of everything we talked about today, from the real-time AI decisions being made by the IVY platform to the role of IVY Book, BlackBerry's physical car dashboard, and how they can be used on a trip too. We did cover a lot. I was limited to time because obviously CES is a big, crazy event. But I think we covered so much there. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look up Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And if you do have time, please leave a rating and review for the podcast. It really helps us in the battle against the algorithms. So if you could leave a quick rating review, I'd appreciate it. Other than that, I'll be back, same time, same place tomorrow, lurking in your podcast feeds with another guest. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.